how did you connect with the source?
I got into journalism because when I was 12, I realized I wanted to do something in rap and do that for my job for the rest of my life. And being in Maryland and both of my parents were school teachers, I didn't have any connections to the music industry, and there was no real music industry in Maryland other than the go-go scene out of DC. But I liked rap more. And even with go-go, there weren't, I was 12 years old when I was having these thoughts. So I was like, I got to figure out how to get involved in the business. So fortunately, my parents both instilled in me a love of reading. And then my dad, in particular, read a lot of newspapers. So we lived right in between Baltimore and DC, about 20 miles from each. So we got the Washington Post, we got the Baltimore Sun, we got the Capital, which was the Annapolis newspaper, and we also got the Maryland Gazette. And then because of where we lived, we got the Baltimore TV channels and the Washington, D.C. TV channels. So I had a lot of access to news and to information. And I just remember, like, man, these reporters, they're going all over the place. They're talking to everybody. They're doing a lot of stuff. This is pretty cool. And then when I got to college, I noticed that, well, also my parents, when I was in high school, had gotten me a subscription to the Source as a Christmas or a birthday gift. I don't remember which one or both or what have you, but they got me a subscription to the Source. And then the Washington Post, thankfully for me, for some reason, covered a lot of rap, like a lot. And so my dad would read the newspaper before he went to work in the morning. So he would like set aside the articles for me, or if he read something later, he'd make sure, hey, Soren, did you see this article on Ice Cube in the Washington Post, or Professor Griff or Easy E or whoever it was, or this album review of Compton's Most Wanted? And I was like, oh man, thanks, Dad. But I was reading all this stuff and my dad was giving it to me. So I knew there were people that wrote about rap for a job. And that's where I was like, oh. So when I got to college, I went to Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio, and their newspaper is called the Newswire. So I went to the Newswire office one day and I was like, hey, I noticed you guys don't write about rap. Is that something I could do for y'all? And they were like, sure, you can review rap, but do some plays first. So I went to one play and I reviewed it for them. And I was like, okay, can I write about rap now? And they were like, sure. But what I also didn't know and what they didn't tell me is when I wrote that first review, they had a budget. And so anybody who wrote an article got $5. Now, of course, even back then, $5 wasn't a lot, but it put the light bulb on in my head like, wait a minute, I could really get paid to write. So if I'm getting $5 from my school newspaper, imagine if I wrote for the Source or the Washington Post or one of these big places, maybe this could be my job. And then I just went all in. Obviously, I had to balance being a full-time student, but my freshman year of college is when I really went hard on it. When I was 19, I had my first articles published. And man, I just, I looked at all the magazine addresses and I sent my articles. I took copies of the newspaper and I mail them to them, say, hey, this is what I can do. You let me know if I can write for you in this section or that section. And just grew from there, man, because I was hitting every magazine, they didn't respond to me in a month. I waited another month and I'd send them another one. So I was relentless, just trying to get in the game, man.
Wow, that's definitely inspiring. I gotta ask you because the Source is like, arguably the greatest hip hop magazine ever. What was it like working for the Source, and do you have any like your most memorable, write ups or connecting with people?
Well, for the Source, it was amazing because when I was in Cincinnati, I wrote for Everybody's News, which was the independent weekly newspaper in Cincinnati at the time. So if you're in DC, Maryland watching this, is like a city paper type of thing. Or if you're in New York, it's like the Village Voice. Or if you're in LA, it was like LA Weekly, but it was called Everybody's News. So I wrote for that. I did a profile on this DJ named DJ ICD, who was one of the prominent rap hip hop DJs in the Cincinnati area. And he was like, man, this article is really good, man, that you wrote on me. Have you ever thought about writing for the Source? And I was like, yeah, I've always wanted to write for the Source, of course. But he's like, oh, I know a guy that writes for the Source or works for the Source. He's going to be here. Can you come to the record store with me on Wednesday or whatever day it was? And I was like, absolutely. So he had told me, and then I just photocopied a bunch of my articles. and put them in his vanilla folder. And the guy was Usman Sam, who worked for the street promotions for the Source. And ICD introduced me to Usman, and ICD is like, "Yo, my man Soren right here, he's a really good writer. You need to have him at the Source." And Usman looked at me. He's like, "Oh, for real?" So then he's like, "Well, what you got?" And I handed him my articles, and he read them, a couple of them right there on the spot. He's like, "Yeah, man, we do need you at the Source." He's like, "Call this dude, uh, right away, or call him tomorrow. Tell him, because I'm gonna call him tonight and tell him that you're gonna be reaching out, but you need to be writing for the Source." And that's how it started. I did my first interview with 8 Ball and MJG, and that was memorable because I remember 8 Ball was on the phone and somebody in the background was talking, and he was like, "Yo, man, be quiet. I'm talking to the Source, man. I'm talking to the Source." So that was an amazing experience. And then, to be able to write for them in college was a real validation that what I was doing was working, because yes, I was getting paid, and that was a beautiful thing, to be earning some money while I was in college and needing to pay off student loans and do all this. But on top of that, it showed me, like, man, this dream is really happening and it's working. It showed the people around me, both in Maryland and in Cincinnati. I didn't really tell people other than my parents, because my dad really helped me a lot by reading almost every single one of my articles back in those days. I'd fax them to him, and he'd like give me some notes or copy editing and proofreading, or, "Oh, this doesn't make sense." But my dad would read a lot of my articles for me and help me. So very few people knew it, but they knew it when they would open up the Source and, "Oh, wait a minute. Soren writes about rap for us at the Newswire, Xavier. Now he's writing about rap for the Source. Like, he's really doing it." So I'd have people coming up to me at the lunch table all the time. People would be asking me questions. So it was an amazing experience, and something that, like I said, I always got to shout out DJ ICD in Cincinnati, and Usman Sam, and Odario Strange for getting me in the mix, and really helping me out and giving me the opportunity, man. It was a blessing.
Was it like the same working for the Source and Double XL? Was it similar, or was it like a totally different atmosphere? Or
Working for Double XL was similar. I did a lot of writing for them when Elliot Wilson, in particular, was the editor in chief. He gave me a lot of assignments, a lot of big ones. And then I worked with some of the other people on some of the other smaller sections of the magazine. Don McClain was one, uh, Daytwan Thomas, Bonsu Thompson. So a lot of people looked out for me and gave me articles and assignments. So it was super cool. And it was similar to the Source in a lot of ways for me, mainly in the sense that I wasn't in New York. I was in Maryland or Cincinnati at the time. And then I got a job at Rap Pages. I moved to LA. And then after Rap Pages folded, then I started back writing for the Source and Double XL again. So it was all cool and, very similar, but it was, one of the most exciting things for me was to interact and talk to the artists, and then, see my writing progress and just get into as many magazines as I could and try to do the best job I could at presenting rap in a lot of different ways and highlighting and showcasing some of these artists. So it was a great, great experience, man.